Reached out to this man. I respect his work immensely. He is terrific at what he does, and the best part about what he does, I'll be honest with you, he can write. He can write very well. He puts things in plain language and also can describe things that are very difficult to understand into language you can understand, and nothing could be more important when covering a lockout, which he now unfortunately does. From the worldwide leader in sports, senior writer covering baseball, Jeff Passan. How you doing, Jeff?
You cashed that check, yes or no?
I have yet to cash the check of $5.59 that I got from my 2 episodes of CSI Miami work. Yes, I have not done that yet.
Will you, however, cash?
The words damn and straight, I think, when stringed together, describe exactly what I will do with that check. Absolutely, I will cash that check. Oh, yeah. It's $5.59. It all adds up, sir. It all adds up.
I was going to say, where's it? What's it going to go toward? What are you going to treat yourself?
I don't know. I might
get a burger.
I don't know. I might. I don't know, a little turkey burger because I'm trying to watch it. It's that time of year. I don't know, but I'm
trying to get. Are you trying to get your 40 time down?
Yes.
Yeah,
Jeff.
it's never too early to get ready for. How about this? I'm hoping that by the time I run the 40 at the combine in the first week of March, that this conversation we're about to have will all be buttoned up. What do you think?
I am cautiously optimistic that by that point, Major League Baseball and the Players Association will have a deal. Because, frankly, if they don't at that point, we're missing games. And if regular season games are missed, that is a big problem for everybody involved. It runs the risk at that point of spiraling into something that it shouldn't, which is why I'm heartened by the fact that we have a few months left for the parties to try and reach an agreement. Because, frankly, there's no single issue at this point that is keeping them so far apart that they can't find a pathway to a deal. There is a pathway to a deal. They just, I think now that we're in the lockout phase is when the real negotiations and bargaining are going to start.
Well, that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on. These are 2 things I wanted to get from you, and we kind of already are in the neighborhood of one of them. The 2 things I want to get from you are the issues that truly are the ones that are going to be the most difficult to hammer out, because there's probably some fire and brimstone owners and some fire and brimstone players that say, screw it, let's burn it down to the ground and build it back up again, because that's the only opportunity we have to do it right now. We haven't had this opportunity since 1990, and screw it. And that's the way, you do miss games. That's number 1, is I want to know what those issues are. And then and number 2. And number 1 is the drop dead date. Like, what is the stroke of midnight date that exists in people's minds that they can screw around and say the most nasty things and then eventually put Humpty Dumpty back together in time for? Because I remember that's the way it worked for the NFL. What do you have for me on that front?
That's how it's working here, too. The big thing is there's no singular issue like Major League Baseball wants a salary cap on the table right now. This is very simply, Rich, a fight about money and a fight about the division of this, during a normal non-COVID year, $10 billion pie. And players, understandably, feel like they've gotten the short end of the stick. Revenues in baseball have grown pretty significantly, and salaries have not. And when you see, a graph that shows this line going upward for clubs and a line that's steady and even this past year went down for players, you're going to have contention there. So while the players say, we want competitive integrity, you don't want teams tanking, because tanking teams means teams that don't spend, and teams that don't spend means fewer in free agency, and fewer options in free agency means lower salaries for players. It's a very simple fact. Players want to get paid more earlier in their careers. Understandable. Baseball's reserve system has it such that for the first 3 years of your career, you get paid right around the major league minimum, which, don't get me wrong, it's great. Right now it's $570,500. It is going to go up and could go up fairly significantly, but it's beyond that. If you have a great player in his 0 to 3 service class, they want bonuses for the ones who are excellent, who are all-stars, who get MVP votes, etc. And, again, a totally understandable thing. The problem is the players want a lot more than that too. Right now, it takes 6 years for them to reach free agency. They would like it to be shorter, or especially for players who don't get called up until later in their careers. Maybe some sort of an age-based system, though that probably ultimately is going to be off the table. They want arbitration, which is where you can negotiate your salary right now in your 4th through 6th seasons. They want that after 2 years instead of after 3.
Oh, boy. Now that's where the owners will be like, you got to be kidding me, because I know they hate arbitration, and it also players may like it, but they also it's a team that comes in and tells an arbitrator, our guy stinks. He's great here, but here's where he also stinks, and that whole process does stink, Jeff. I mean, so you're mentioning a lot of things that are on the table, but what's the one thing that's going to actually be the last thing on the table that everyone's going to threaten? Games aren't going to be played, and the commissioner's going to come out and say players aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing at this table. They're the ones who are walking away. Like, that's the way it's going to go. When is that date? When is that date where they finally decide that we need to get this done? Because if we don't get spring training on time, that means April doesn't happen on time. When does that happen?
I'm going to throw a couple dates out to you. I think February 1st is an important date. I think if there is no movement by February 1st, then suddenly things start getting a little tricky. Things start getting a little perilous. But ultimately, Rich, this is about missing regular season games. Missing spring training games would be bad because spring training has become a big revenue driver for major league clubs, so they don't want to do that. But March 1st is the day that I have targeted in my mind. If there's not an agreement in place by March 1st, it's going to be pretty perilous. Now, we saw during COVID that players can get ready for a season in about 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. They did that during the COVID year. They can do it here. But let's remember all of the different things that have to go on in addition to getting the season ready. There's still a bunch of really good free agents who are out there right now, despite the fact that $1.7 billion was spent in November to sign guys, and we're on our ways to absolute record revenues in free agency for players. Carlos Correa is still out there. Freddie Freeman's out there. Trevor Story's still out there. Not just marginal guys. There are dudes still out there, and on top of that, there are hundreds of players who don't have jobs at this point. So you're going to have a crazy frenzy when the lockout ends trying to just simply construct teams. On top of that, there's the issue with Latin American players of getting visas. If a player is not in the country right now, then it's going to be a difficult thing to get him a visa and have him in there on time if you're not, in agreement by March 1st. So that's the day in my mind that I'm really targeting is important. I think, and granted, I'm being optimistic here, I think there will be a deal in place before then, because despite the fact that we are in the 9th work stoppage in Major League Baseball history, Rich, I still think that there is a pathway to a deal. And now that we're in the lockout phase, to me, it's going to be a lot easier for them to figure it out because, frankly, they see the writing on the wall. They understand that if they don't get moving on this soon, that it has a chance to imperil the entire sport.
No, I know that. That's a reasonable approach, Jeff. But like I told you, I just remember when this happened with the NFL, there are going to be some owners and some who have a lot of influence who are saying, we haven't had this opportunity in a long time. And don't worry about the fans. We'll take care of that, and we'll pound the table and we'll tar and feather the players. And, they're the ones who have got more to lose. They don't want to lose paychecks. Let's do what we've always wanted to do. And then there'll be some players that'll say the same thing. And that is what leads to the ultimate peril is what I'm saying, And so let's go on the flip side. I just remember for the NFL lockout, and I've also heard that this might have been a little bit overplayed as in terms of a narrative, but Jeff Saturday of the Colts and Bob Kraft of the Patriots got together. I remember they famously hugged it out. In front of cameras. Is there a relationship that we should be keeping an eye on like that in baseball as we go forward on this thing, Jeff?
Yeah, not at this point. No one's hugging right now. They are
that's it.
Far from the hugging phase at this point.
Or just an owner that can reach out to a player in the association or something like that. Is there a back channel that you might know of or anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, those sorts of things emerge over time. There's always back channeling going on, and there are always even third parties who are trying to go and bridge the gap. But at this point, no, both sides are very locked in on their positions, and until there is a move, and listen, there were small moves this week, right? The league proposed getting rid of what's called direct draft pick compensation. So when you have a star player who's about to be a free agent, you can give him a qualifying offer, which this year was a 1-year, $18.4 million contract. If a player rejects that, goes to free agency and signs somewhere else, the team that signs him has to give up a draft pick. And because of that, teams are less likely to either pursue particular players or to pay them what their fair and free market value would be. And because of that, Major League Baseball recognizes this is an impediment on free agency and offered to take direct draft pick compensation off the table. That was actually a pretty significant move. On the other hand, the union, which had opposed expanding playoffs, proposed a 12-team playoff, expanded from the 10 right now, but not quite to the 14 that Major League Baseball wants, as well as the ability to put patches on uniforms, which, of course, would be sponsorship dollars in the pockets of the teams every year. So
14 teams, Jeff. Come on, man.
Little bitty movements this week, but in terms of the core economics, there was not a whole lot, and they're still fighting over those. And when they do get back to the bargaining table, I think we're really going to get a better sense of what that big issue is going to be and how it's going to be resolved.
Well, I'll tell you this, and Jeff Passan, a couple more minutes left with the MLB Insider and senior writer at ESPN covering the sport. I was surprised and I guess a little bit heartened to see all these deals that did get made beforehand, because that means that everyone knows that business is going to be somewhat remotely close to usual, like that the rules won't be so far afield that players aren't thinking, I'm going to hold off right now and see if the rules change to the point where I might get less. No, they're clearly thinking they're going to get just the same amount, if not like that whatever Scherzer took is going to be market value after this. Clearly, Scott Boras isn't going to let anybody do that, right? So putting it all together, I mean, the Wander Franco contract.
I'll put it all together to you or for you.
Please.
The fact that as much money was spent tells me that both players and owners believe that there is going to be a 2022 season, and a pretty substantive 2022 season. The reason it came together in free agency as quickly as it did, Rich, is because there's a deadline. And for a long time, people throughout the sport have advocated for some kind of a deadline because we have to understand the difference between baseball free agency and the other sports. In the NFL, in the NBA, in the NHL, you have a salary cap system. Teams know exactly how much money they have to spend. Players' value is pretty static, so you know what it's going to cost to go out and get a guy. And because of that, you can have this frenzy of contract signings at the beginning of a free agent period. It's why we see Adam Schefter and Adrian Wojnarowski, dropping bombs all day long for the first 72 hours of free agency, and then the rest of the free agent period seems just kind of dead. Baseball's never operated that way. Baseball's always been such that, the contracts can be outlandish, and we saw one of those with Corey Seager this week, getting $325 million over 10 years from the Texas Rangers. So to have baseball with an artificial thing in place like this lockout deadline in which no free agent contracts can be signed, no players can be traded. You look at MLB.com and MLB Network now, and they don't even reference players or have their names, image, or likenesses up there. I mean, it's pretty crazy to see, and what it fueled was an unprecedented free agent market.
Well, Jeff Passan, you have many a December and January stand-ups outside of fronts of hotels coming your way. You've got, you also, I wound up through the NFL lockout getting an honorary law degree from the Tulane Sports Law Program. Gabe Feldman gave that to me. because I became such an expert on these subject matters. That's your next 2 months, hopefully not longer. So
hey, thanks, Rich. I appreciate the optimism. Super psyched.
No, get a good pair of shoes. I mean, Albert Breer literally could have lived outside on the corner on Washington D.C. outside the NFLPA's front offices. I did so many of those with him. So get comfortable shoes and learn your law degree, and then we'll talk later on. How does that sound?
You're going to have to call me Jeff Passan JD from now on.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Counselor, thank you. I give you a hug through the phone. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
See you, buddy.
There you go. It's Jeff Passan. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.